David Davis.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I stand to support my honourable friend, the member for Caister, Sutherland, Easter Ross, in new clause 4. But before I come to briefly speak about that, I'll just respond to the right honourable members for Caerphilly's comments at the beginning, because I'm afraid to say I largely agree with him. I don't hold much of a brief for any of this bill, but this particular section, Part 2, seems to me to be a very serious mistake as it now stands. And in particular, I am concerned because, at least when I came into this House, it was a convention that we did not guillotine constitutional bills. And yet this part of the bill goes to the heart of our democracy. It goes to the heart of free speech, as is demonstrated by the opponents to the bill. I mean, I don't know of a bill in past which has got against it Christian Aid and the British Humanist Association, Greenpeace and the Countryside Alliance, and the Royal British Legion and the Salvation Army. I mean, it is a bill which has attracted opposition precisely because it goes to the heart of all that those organisations do. Not what they stand for, but what they do, the way they execute their duty in society. I will briefly, yes.
Right honourable gentleman giving way, he makes a very important point. Is it not also the case that, although it's not such a broad constitutional issue, the kind of points that we've been raising about some of the implications for impacts with Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland are very real concerns, not just ones we're making points at today. And when not got right, there's very real danger legislation we produce, which is quite frankly unworkable.
That is why I start from my concern about the guillotine. Because this is a bill which in past decades, not past years, sadly, would have spent hours and hours and days and weeks on the floor of the House. Would have been preceded by a proper consultation, a cross-party agreement, a green paper, a white paper. There was a white paper, but as far as I could tell, it didn't refer to Part 2 at all. And so it's not gone through what is, in my view, a proper constitutional process, and so will, of course, be subject to unintended consequences all over the place. And I do accept that the government will not have intended many of the consequences. I'll come to something it does intend in a minute. But I accept that the deleterious consequences of this bill were not intentional, but they arise directly out of the way the government has started into this process. We have a brilliant report, actually, from the committee chaired by the right honourable member for Nottingham North, which could have provided a basis. Well, that committee could have been the vehicle for that. But so he's right, there will be deleterious consequences, most of them unintended, most of them, however, because of the way we have addressed this bill. I will give way to.
I thank the right honourable member for giving way, and would he agree with me that the NVCO has made it absolutely clear that it has very similar concerns outstanding despite the apparent movement by the government on clause 26? They say in their brief, we remain concerned that voluntary organisations may still be subject to ambiguous and damaging legislation. NVCVO believes in a society where freedom of speech, the freedom to associate and the right to free and fair elections are all similarly inviolable.
Let me pick up that point and develop it a little, because we're principally talking about clause 26 here, but it relates also to later clauses which will be dealt with later in the day. But this is where the comments from the Electoral Commission, the primary executing agency of this bill, come into play. The words they used were significant regulatory uncertainty, parts of the bill being impossible to enforce, and significant issues of workability. Now, so what are we doing here? We are creating or transforming a bureaucratic organisation in such a way that, with the powers to make rules on policy campaigning, to relax those rules, to tighten those rules, to amend those rules retrospectively, and then to apply those rules retrospectively to freedom of speech, which is, by definition, oppressive, and by definition will chill the freedom of speech. We have, of course, this Parliament has created a bureaucracy with that ability to alter, change and amend the rules before. It was known as IPSA. So what we're creating here is sort of IPSA for elections, if we want a precursor of how this will play out. Now, to come specifically to new clause 4, when it comes to political campaigns, the world is changing. Whether we're talking about electoral campaigns or other campaigns, the world is changing. 25 years ago, I think only 8% of the population did not feel an affinity to one or other particular party. That's now 25%. The political parties themselves are declining, all of them. There's no party point in this. We are all dying on the vine as organisations. It is the nature of society that people's interest in something tends to be more piecemeal than it used to be 25 or 50 years ago. And so what this bill is doing is trying to swim upstream. It is trying to defy the nature of modern politics. It's trying to defy the fact that political decision-making now is made by web-based campaigns, by web-based petitions, by 38 Degrees. And I get as annoyed as everybody else when I get 38 Degree campaigners write to me and they say that they sometimes get dusty replies. But as Voltaire would have put it, you know, I may disagree with what they say, but I defend to the death their right to say it. And what this part of this bill does, not intentionally, but what it does by accident, is jeopardise that entire tradition of our country. And this is the home of free speech, and this chamber is the original defender of free speech. So what are we doing? Doing this by accident, which is why I am concerned. Honourable Member, yes.
Making extremely strong points and does not agree with me that in the case of 38 Degrees, actually 38 Degrees is facilitating the voice of our constituents on many of these issues. It's not campaigning itself sort of separated from society, and actually what we would be doing is cutting down on the ability of our constituents to have their voices known on many crucial issues.
He invites me to commit political suicide by confessing that I have actually used 38 Degrees in some of my campaigns, but, you know, sometimes I'm for, sometimes against. It is a part of the modern mechanism. It isn't the only one. It was based, after all, on similar organisations in America and Australia, and it's the way politics is going. And frankly, my constituents should judge me on whether I voted for the Syrian proposed war. They should judge me on whether I voted for tuition fees. They should judge me on whether I supported the government on this, or that, or other measure. And if I may, I will disagree with the author of New Clause 4 on one point, because he did say that the Honourable Member for Bolsover was wrong to say that this was to protect the Liberal Party from the National Union of Students. I was told by a member of the Liberal Party that that's exactly what it was intended for. Now, the raw truth is, people, in our trade, that is what we should have to stand up with. You know, we should be willing to stand by our principles and stand by our aims and stand by what we actually do. And we should live or die by that in political terms. Now, if I may, I'll draw this to a close because I only wanted to make one substantive point here, really. But there was one other issue which came up, which I will make this point to the front bench directly. As I said, this is a constitutional clause or constitutional section of this bill which goes to the heart of free speech in our society. We have had undertakings from the front bench entirely in good faith, I imagine, and I know he was being teased, the Minister was being teased about providing a manuscript amendment. That's not the way to do it. What is the way to do it? Is to do it properly, with proper legal advice, taking a wide scale of contributions from the very people who are affected. What they should have done before the bill was presented to the House should be done now. Because if it's not done now, and if what is presented in report stage is unacceptable, it will probably still get through, although I shall vote against it, but it will probably still get through. I'm on my last line, so forgive me. It will probably still get through. But what will quite properly happen is that the House of Lords, as a defender of our constitutional rights as its primary function, will strip the whole central section out of this bill. That's what it will do, that's what it ought to do if the government does not get the next stage right.